When I first moved to Australia, I almost crashed a $50,000 car about 3 blocks away from the dealership. Now, before you start heading to the comments to say I'm a terrible driver, I can assure you that typically I'm pretty okay. However, if you've ever driven in a country where the traffic flows on the opposite side of the road than you're used to, you know exactly what I'm talking about here. So there I was, confidently test driving this beautiful red Mazda, appreciating the look and feel of the car, and approaching a roundabout, and I looked to the wrong side. My partner, who almost never raises his voice, suddenly yelled, "Look right!" Which, by the way, is the only time in my life he has ever yelled at me, and also the only time in my life I have been incredibly grateful that he did. Interestingly enough, I never made that mistake again. Apparently, my brain just needed one very dramatic reminder of how roundabouts work on this side of the planet. We didn't end up buying the car, by the way. I was just too happy to return it without a single scratch. But that moment made me realize something interesting about big life changes. When we make a big, brave decision, like moving to another country, or starting a new career, or stepping into a completely different environment, we usually expect to feel stronger. After all, we made that decision from a place of competence, and we expect to bring that self-confidence into the new situation. But sometimes the exact opposite happens. You know who you are and you know what you're capable of, yet somehow, once you're in the middle of it, you start feeling like a smaller version of yourself. Here's what I think that happens. Most of our confidence is built on competence. Over the years, we learn how things work around us. We learn the subtleties and nuances of our language. We learn the ins and outs of all the social rules. We know how to navigate daily life naturally and with ease. And all of that competence quietly feeds our confidence. Your brain has years of evidence that says, I can handle things. But when you move into a completely new environment, many of those competence systems suddenly reset. The way things work, even everyday things, can suddenly feel unfamiliar. Less competence in the environment means less evidence for your confidence. And that's where that strange feeling of feeling younger can begin, because the environment no longer reflects the competence that you have built over all these years. This can happen with most big life transitions. Usually only one or maybe two competence systems change. In expat life, however, this effect gets amplified because so many things change all at once. Language, cultural norms, humor, administrative systems, how healthcare works, how the banking system works, and even something as simple as driving, which apparently includes remembering which side of the roundabout to look at. Or also from personal experience, after more than a year, still occasionally making a complete fool out of myself in the car whenever I am intending to take a turn, or maybe even wanting to signal to someone with my lights that they can cross the street. You know that moment when the wipers suddenly start enthusiastically cleaning a perfectly dry windshield? And you're sitting there going, really, brain? Are we still doing this? One of the biggest competence resets many expats experience is language, and we need to address the impact of this. Suddenly, you can't express yourself the way that you normally would. It affects how you can express your sense of humor, how it comes out. Your thoughts get simplified, or at least the expression of your thoughts do. You may hesitate before speaking or even dreading social interactions altogether because you're worried about sounding foolish. That experience can be incredibly frustrating and isolating. Because internally you know that you're intelligent and you have ideas, but the tools you normally use to express that aren't fully available yet. The tools you have in the foreign language may make you feel like a 6-year-old. And that is exactly what happens. Many people start feeling like a smaller version of themselves because the environment currently only allows for a smaller slice of them to appear. There's a metaphor I find helpful here. Do you know the phrase, beam me up, Scotty? If you do, yeah, I am really that old. And if you don't, just, imagine beaming up a penguin and instantly dropping it into the desert. Now, that penguin would probably look incredibly awkward, slow, not understanding how to move properly or find food. The exact same penguin that was the most graceful swimmer on the planet just 3 seconds ago. The penguin didn't suddenly lose its competence in moving, but the environment simply changed the rules and started asking for something different. And when we move into a completely new environment, our brains experience something similar. Except, unlike penguins in the desert, humans are incredibly good at adapting. Our competence grows surprisingly quickly. We just often don't notice it while it's happening because our brain is also very good at noticing and even rubbing in our mistakes, but is rather bad at noticing progress, especially when it's subtle. So here's one small thing that can really help. Start tracking your growing competence. Make a list on your phone, because you and I both know you always have that thing on you. Whenever you notice something that worked or became easier, even something tiny, take out your phone and quickly add it to the list. I'm serious. You should do this. It could be something like, I didn't accidentally start the windshield wipers today. Or I ordered coffee and I actually got coffee. Or I figured out how the bus system works. These may sound like silly small things, but they're actually evidence that your brain is learning to understand the environment. And when you look back in a few weeks or months and read that list again, you realize that you're learning far more than you probably remembered, and that your competence has been growing the whole time. And that in turn means that your confidence will naturally follow. Another thing that helped me personally was simply saying, I'm new here. I don't know how this works yet. And that might feel scary or uncomfortable at first, but in my experience, the moment that you say something like that out loud, most people immediately switch into helpful mode. Now, the reason I wanted to share this here today is because many expats interpret this experience of, feeling like that smaller version of yourself as something being wrong with them, when in reality, a lot of what they're experiencing is simply a natural result of entering a completely new environment. And navigating expat life, especially as an expat partner, often comes with very specific challenges that most generic advice doesn't address. That's exactly why I created the Expat Partner Impact Consult. Inside this conversation that I want to invite you for, we look at how expat life is currently affecting you and which areas of your life might be experiencing that competence reset the most. It's not a pressure sales call. It's a focused conversation designed to help you understand your situation more clearly and explore what your next best step could be. I know how disorienting this phase can feel, and I want to help other expat partners navigate their journey with more clarity and direction. If that sounds helpful to you, you can find the link near this video. And in the meantime, if you're currently in the phase where things feel harder than you expected, remember that image of the penguin in the desert. You're simply learning to adapt to a completely new environment. You got this. And until we meet again, remember to reclaim the life that you love, connect to what truly matters, and rise above the common.